Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Modern 1054 in the 15-minute pool on ICC. They open with Knight f3, a player after my own heart. Okay, I'll play d5 in response. So Modern is 1796, and they are transposing into Slav territory. Just taking a look at their stats. Lots of games played by this player, over 5,000 15-minute games. Impressive. Okay, so I usually play Knight f6 here, but you know what? Let's mix it up a little bit. Let's play e6. Let's play a triangle. Yeah, and queen c2 is a popular way to combat the triangle. I'm going to play knight f6 now. The idea of this move order is to try to take on c4, but in playing queen c2, white discouraged that. Had they played knight c3, I could play d takes c4 and possibly enter the note boom variation. A very complex line. But now we're going to have a transposition either to, for instance, a semi-Slav after e3, or if white wants to play bishop g5, another popular move, here I can play d takes c4 followed by b5 and try to gain some activity that way. I think I will play this move. And they just recover the pawn. So now we want to strike with b5 because eventually we would like to liberate our light square bishop by playing bishop b7 and c5. So they drop the queen back to c2. I think bishop b7 is the move right here, but I'm just considering what I'm going to do if they play, for instance, e4. How would I treat that resulting position? Bishop e7, e4. I could play bishop e7, but then e5, knight d5. My dark squares become a bit weak if we trade. Is it maybe h6? Looking to force this bishop to make a decision? But they could just play bishop h4, and g5 seems too aggressive. Might be something like queen a5 check. That might be the move. Okay, I'm going to play bishop here anyways. Yeah, and if e4 check, I'm thinking queen a5 check. More often they seem to put the pawn on e3 in this line. There's a great book on this opening written by Grandmaster Sherbakov, who is a writer for chesspublishing.com, or he was for many years. So white goes for this. Yeah, I think queen a5 check is the reaction here. Let's do it. I could also play bishop b4, but I think this is a better way to do it because we get out of the pin. Give a check while escaping the pin. If knight c3, I'll probably just play knight bd7, so white backs the bishop up here. Now I could play queen b6. They might play bishop e3, but that bishop could be subject to harassment by my knight with knight g4. The thing about bishop b4, if I were to play that move, I'm somewhat concerned that white would ignore it and play knight c3, and I don't really want to initiate the capture on c3 myself. So let's just pull the queen back here. Sorry to those who have been requesting that I bring back the ICC board sounds, so the in-game audio, the piece movements. It's been messing with my speakers, and I can't figure out why. It's only ICC, it's this one program. My speakers work fine for everything else, but I may have to completely uninstall my interface and try again, which would mess up some of my settings, so I've been hesitant to do that. If I had a quick fix for it, I promise I would do it by now, but there doesn't seem to be an obvious one. So a4 was played trying to undermine my pawn structure. I could play a6 in reply. I could play b4 and just try to grab some space on the queen side. However, if I play b4, then they're probably going to continue with a5 and hit my queen, and that pawn might come up all the way to a6. So I think it's better to play a6 and defend our construction here on the queen side. Yeah, b4, a5 doesn't quite look right. Then I'm in retreat mode. So if a6, then a takes b5, I could just play c takes b5 there because my bishop covers c8. So that's a nice aspect to this. So let's play this move. If a5, I can always just play the queen back to d8. I might not go to c7 because that's in the line of fire with white's queen, although queen c7 is probably okay too. If a takes b5, c takes b5, bishop a5, I can play queen c6. and offer a trade of the queens, and also I feel like e4 could be weak. Okay, so they do go ahead and play a5. I have this feeling like white's going to follow with b4 and try to clamp the position. So if I play queen d8 and they play b4, I should have something in mind. Like maybe I can play c5 there, trying to engage the e4 pawn. But they do have e5 then. So maybe that's not in my favor. So queen d8, b4, and they're going to be contending that it's just hard for me to achieve c5. That is a bit alarming. I mean, I might have to go for c5 in that case, but there is that e5 move that I haven't figured out how to address. Okay, well, let's do this right away. I want to put pressure on d4 as well. At least if they play pawn b4, then their bishop will be stuck defending that pawn. So I may try to take advantage of that somehow. I don't exactly know how yet. Okay, they play bishop there. That makes me feel a lot better. I think b4 would have been critical. And after the game, I'm going to look at that moment because I want to see if that was dangerous. It could be. I mean, that's quite a clamp on c5. And if white can stop me from playing c5, then this position could go south in a hurry. So bishop g5. Now they're threatening e5. I can always pull the emergency break if necessary and play h6 after e5, but I still should be doing something about this threat. I was thinking bishop b4 check now, because then I'd be attacking the a5 pawn, and maybe white would just have to go directly back. So if bishop b4 check, bishop d2, I wonder if I can play c5 then, opening up the attack on e4. They could play bishop takes b4, c takes b4. Looks nice for me already, though. And my bishop is free, importantly. I could play something like h6 here and just see if they go bishop h4 or take. But I really want to play bishop b4 check. c5 also comes to mind. Even though that allows white to play e5, I can play this h6 move in reply, and then if bishop h4, play g5. Knight takes g5. It kind of looks like a Botvinnik variation of the semi-Slav then. Yeah, there's options here. So candidate moves are h6, c5, bishop b4 check. All that good stuff. Maybe knight bd7, but bishop b4 check is currently leading the way as far as my candidate moves. So if I check, they play bishop d2, and then I play c5. If d takes c5, then I like my play after bishop takes e4, I think. That's looking good, I believe. So I suspect bishop b4 check, bishop d2, c5, bishop takes b4 will be the way. And then I can't take e4 because they would take c5 with their queen, but I can just take back c takes b4, and this pawn is questionable. The fate of that pawn. And a5 is really tough for white to defend. So I'm going to go for this move. We'll see how they react. Because bishop d2 is going to feel like a mini failure for white if they play it. He played it right away. Probably he saw bishop b4 coming. All right, so let's do this one. Thematic, getting the bishop free, pressurizing e4. So as I was describing, if white takes on b4, I would have to take with the c-pawn, because bishop takes e4, while an in-between move would fail to queen takes c5. So bishop takes b4, c takes b4, and I have doubled pawns, but the pawn on a5 is suddenly a target, and also the center is a target too. And I think with my knight maybe coming out to c6, whereupon it could attack d4 and a5, I'm liking my chances. Also, maybe a rook coming over to c8 quickly. White's queen is on that file. This type of line is a good illustration of why I chose to go back to d8 a couple moves ago on move 11 instead of c7. My queen is not caught in any uncomfortable pins. You could imagine if my queen was on c7 right now, bishop takes b4 would be winning a piece for white. I could not take back because my queen would be hanging here. Okay, so white's going to go for this. I'm down a bit of time, but the landscape of the position is changing, so I think that may slow white down a little bit. We'll see. So they develop the knight here. Now, I have to be kind of precise, I think, because if I play knight c6, natural move attacking both these pawns, I think they're going to go knight b3. Maybe that's not so bad after rook c8, though, threatening discovered attacks. Because if knight c5, I do have knight takes d4 there. So maybe knight c6 is a pretty good move, actually. So knight c6, knight b3, rook c8. I'm threatening that discovery. Maybe they can play something like queen d3. I can always play knight d7 if I need to cover the c5 square. Yeah, let's do this knight move. I want to leave this d7 square open for my other knight to go to. So that's why I didn't play knight bd7, although knight bd7 would leave the c-file open and also it would keep my bishop pointing at e4. So I'm trying to use my minor pieces to attack these weak pawns. e4, d4, a5. d4 and a5 are weaker than e4. I think knight b3 is almost essential for white here. I don't see too many other good moves. I mean, maybe they would consider e5 first, but if e5, knight d7, then the pawn structure is rather defined. Knight b3, rook c8. It seems to me like white's going to have to waste time with their queen, making another queen move to escape the discovered attacks. I played this move order maybe once or twice OTB, this triangle. Some of the lines that are possible out of this are interesting, but there's a lot of theory to memorize, and sometimes I feel at best black's just going to get like a semi-Slav-like position anyways, delaying the development of the knight to f6. I think it's an occasionally effective weapon, though. And in fact, Grandmaster Benjamin Bach, the winner of the London Classic, he played this way against me with black. Our game was a bit different, though. I had played d4, d5, c4, e6, knight c3, c6. So my knight was on c3 rather than, as in this game, white having the knight on f3. So white is thinking a bit here. I don't know. I think knight b3 and maybe e5 are the only candidate moves. I don't see anything else that is appealing for white. Maybe queen d3 I can at the very least take on a5. So I think knight b3 is the move that would... Well, okay, there white goes playing a move I didn't anticipate. So they're letting me take either pawn. Why would you do that? Is maybe their idea if knight takes d4, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, knight b3 with tempo, and then they're looking to get into c5 next move, perhaps? I don't know about that. One thing that catches my eye right away is I can just play rook c8 here if I want. And then I'm threatening discovered attacks. Knight takes d4 and knight takes a5 coming with tempo. So I'm tempted to just flick this move in right away. If rook c8, queen b3, knight takes d4... I actually win a piece after queen takes b4, knight takes d3 because the bishop will hang at the end. So that is a nice line. Rook c8, queen b3, knight takes d4, knight takes, queen takes. Maybe just knight f3 at the end of that line, though. They could do that. Getting a little low on time, so I'm probably going to try to make my next move in the next minute. So knight takes d4, knight takes, queen takes. There's nothing wrong with that variation, though. There's also nothing wrong with knight takes a5, I don't think. Or even, well, castling maybe knight b3. So if I'm going to rip a pawn, I probably should do it now or play rook c8. So if rook c8, queen b3, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, knight to f3. Queen c5, perhaps. That's a good position for me. Okay, we're going with rook c8. The tempo move. Try to get white to move their queen. Not yet revealing which pawn we're going to take. d4 or a5. Probably we're going to take d4, but you never know. a5 might be a tantalizing target as well. There is the possibility of d5, but I really doubt that they would play that move. Okay, this move I saw, but I just assumed after knight d7 that white would have to retreat. But maybe they're getting into d6 is their point. This move seems a little reckless to me. So if knight takes d4, they do have queen takes d4, is the point. If knight takes a5, they have queen takes b4. But knight d7, they'd have to play queen d6. If I take a5, they take b4. Yeah, maybe this move is stronger than I gave it credit for. I really didn't think about it too much because I just thought knight d7 was going to refute it, but there is that pesky queen d6 move. A bit annoying. Well, I can still play knight takes a5 if I want. Yeah, I think that was an inaccuracy by me. No discoveries with this knight really make much sense. Like knight e5 doesn't work. What about knight g4 threatening knight e5? It's a tricky looking move. It's a weird looking move, but I kind of like it. I mean, maybe they go queen b6 or something. I'm pretty low on time here, so again, I got to make a move quick. I think I'm just going to take here. Yeah. They're going to take b4, but I can bring my knight back to c6, and I think the position's still pretty good, but I wish I would have gone for knight takes d4 or knight takes a5. So missed the move 17, queen c5 idea. Got to move a little faster now. Yeah, and white's playing chicken with me. Okay, knight d7, queen d6, maybe queen e7. Something like that. I'm still looking at this knight g4 move. I'm half tempted to play that. But nah, I think I'm going to play it safe. And go here and maybe play for the endgame. Get my queen on e7 soon. Well, in that case, I could have played the direct queen e7, but this move looks alright as well. Yeah, so let's do this and look for a swap. And then I'm going to send this knight into b4. That's my plan. So knight from c6 to b4. White really does not want to trade. They're like anti-trade right now. Okay, well, let's send this knight in right away. Attack that bishop. Ooh, that could be really bad for them, right? Because if bishop b1, rook c1 check is possible. I'm leaving g7 hanging, but I take d3 with check if they dare to take there, so I don't think they'll do that. This could be costly for white. I don't think they thought about that last move too closely. Okay, well, this just runs into rook c1, right? Rook c1, king e2, take h1. He takes g7, but, I mean, I can play queen f6 thereafter. That is not looking good for white. Check. b8 is covered by the knight. Note. So no problem there. They could play queen c7, I guess, but I think I can just play bishop a8 then. If queen c8, I have queen d8 holding. So I don't see any big trouble. Yeah, white's just going to go after, they're going to go after the pawn. So queen f6 probably, or rook f8, one of the two. Let's just go rook f8, actually. We'll leave our king in the center for now. Not worried about losing h7, that's fine. He can have that pawn. We're up quite a bit of material. Knight c2 is actually a threat. That's kind of funny. And then if bishop takes, we win the rook over here. But he could just move the rook if we played knight c2, so that doesn't accomplish much, maybe. This knight is guarding b1. Could play the queen back to g3, but I can cover c7. Even a move like king d8 is probably okay there. Making sure queen c7 doesn't invade. I might go e5 soon, if I can. Like, if queen takes h7, I think e5 is a pretty attractive move. Pretty strange game, I must say. Knight b3. Where are you going with that? Okay, here I'm thinking about a simplifying operation. Take on b1, rook takes b1, bishop takes e4. I'd be up a piece then. Looks really nice. We give a little bit of material, but it greatly clarifies things. Gets our rook out of there too. Yeah, let's do that. So we're giving like 1 point of material, but winning a very nice center pawn. I'm not really afraid of rook c1. I can play bishop d3 check and then bishop c4. It's also bishop takes f3 check if I want. Bishop check, king d2. Anything to fear there? I don't think so. I gotta make sure I don't get checkmated, obviously. There's also bishop c2. Bishop c2 is pretty direct and strong, I think, as well. But there's king d2 in that case. Okay, well, let's give a check first of all. Just see where he goes with the king. Maybe after king d2, knight b6 is a good move. Looking for knight c4 check. That might be even stronger. Okay, so he plays king there, but now this is a problem for white, attacking the knight and also threatening knight d3. Yeah, and he overlooked that this is possible. So now we pick up the rook. Knight c6 is not going to hurt us. White resigned. All right, so a very reckless game from White's side. You can't play like this. They played too fast. They just blundered, allowing rook c1, obviously. I didn't play a perfect game myself. I missed queen c5. But you can just tell by the speed with which White was making these decisions that they weren't calculating near as enough as they should. Yes, I did get in a little bit of time pressure, but this just follows the pattern that you've seen in many of my games in the 15-minute category, where one player just plays at blitz speed and then they wind up in a bad position as a result. They're just not thinking about their moves. I mean, even here at the end, like, this is not incredibly hard to see that I want to go bishop c4, but they just allowed that to happen. They were totally oblivious to knight to d3 check. And I'm not saying this to embarrass White or, make them feel bad or anything, but like, you just can't get better playing like this. It's impossible. White's not taking the game seriously enough. So, all right, let's go back and take a look at it. So this started out as a ready, but then after d4, White takes it back into Slav, semi-Slav, triangle territory. And I played this e6 triangle. Yeah, I think the triangle probably has more value if you play it via the following move order. So with the knight on c3 and then playing c6 thereafter. You can play it against knight f3, but I think that queen c2 move that White played in the game is a nice way to defend c4. Here, queen c2 is not possible. White could play queen d3 or queen b3 if they wanted, but I think it's a bit more effective here. The downside of this is that White can play e4, and in fact, e4 is the critical move, one of the critical moves. since there's no knight on f6 to stop the pawn from coming up. D takes e4, knight takes e4, bishop b4 check is how the line goes. Now against Bach, from the white side, I chose knight c3, which is a safe option. The combative way to go and the principled way is bishop d2, allowing black to take the pawn on d4, after which there's a ton of theory in this resulting gambit position. White has sacrificed a pawn and hopes to gain the initiative as a result. Some utter craziness can happen from here. So, as played though, the knight was on f3, and that changes things a little bit. White seemed to know what to do against this line, and they played queen c2, which is a good way to defend the pawn. So I just played knight f6 here, and then d takes c4, queen takes c4, b5. I was trying to remember what the proper way to go was here. I mean, a6 is another move that I can think about as well in preparation for c5, because definitely black would love to achieve the pawn break, as I was saying, and you pretty much need a6 to do that, because b5 is going to get too weak otherwise. So I'm going to load the engine here and just see what it says. Yeah, it says bishop e7 is fine, e4. I bet I can look this position up in the book. I'm sure it's there. I was just making it up at this point. I played this queen a5 check move. It's possible that this is just not the strongest. So h6. h6, maybe the idea of h6 is that if white wants to maintain the pin with bishop h4, now this move could be more effective if I wanted to go for it. Moreover, maybe what the engine is proposing here is also good. g4, and then d4 could be hanging after the knight moves. I didn't consider that aspect of pushing the kingside pawns. So this is just a specific position where if you played this line regularly, you would have to know what to do, because I think what white has played so far makes a lot of sense. And I don't want to be just winging it. Like, this is the reason why I don't play this line hardly at all over the board, because I haven't looked at the theory enough to be comfortable here as black. It's different than a semi-Slav. So I went queen a5 check. White dropped the bishop back to d2. They could try a developing move like knight bd2, but I would have just been happy to be out of the pin in that case. Probably I would have continued here, but maybe it's easy for white to play. Bishop d3, they get ready to castle. Probably my queen is misplaced on a5. It's not clear what it's doing on that square after white has just whisked their king away to the king side. So, yeah, I think queen a5 is an inaccuracy. White went here. I played queen b6. Maybe b4 is worth considering. Trying to take away the c3 square from white's knight. They could develop through a3, however, and try to get the knight to c4. That's an option. I cannot take the knight because I would lose my queen. So I played queen b6. Now I was thinking if they played bishop e3, it's nice that I can go knight g4 if I want. Maybe also developing is fine. This probably is not that big of a deal. Yeah, bishop c5. D takes e6, f takes e6. Take, queen takes, and despite the weakness here, black is getting developed and I'm ready to castle. So after queen b6, white played a4. And I played a6, but maybe in view of the potential clamp that could occur in a couple more moves, I've already misplayed this. I mean, that's a pretty hefty evaluation in white's favor through 10 moves. a5 is not a move I considered. a5 is interesting, though. I saw the engine recommend that. So that way I physically block white from playing a5. And if they take here, well, I would assume we take back, but is there a tactical problem with that? Knight c3, defending this pawn, attacking b5. Maybe my pawns are getting a bit overextended. Yeah, I don't like this position. I think something's gone wrong, and I think queen a5 check was the culprit. My sense of danger was kicking in right about here, because after a5, queen d8, I thought b4 might be a serious option. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. So maybe, I see the engine doesn't like a5 so much, so maybe white can improve right here. The engine wants to go b4 directly. So that way, if I play c5, the freeing move, trying to get bishop takes e4 in, white can take it, and they're on my queen. So if I were to take here, they can play queen takes e4, and they win a piece. That's kind of subtle, because I think we both assumed that a5 would be played, which white did indeed play. But yeah, b4 could be the better way of continuing. So a5 was played, and I was talking about the difference between c7 and d8. I might have exaggerated the importance of going to d8. Like, I wasn't quite sure which square was best, but I thought that white was going to play b4. I thought that was their main idea in bringing the pawn to a5. And it seemed to me that on d8, I had a better chance of pressurizing d4 in that case. But once again, just considering what the engine has to say, it likes queen c7 better, and it says black has no problems here. In fact, it slightly prefers black somehow now. So what happens at b4 here? c5 all the same. Let's say white takes this way. Bishop takes e4. Maybe my queen can create a battery at some stage. But the engine just wants to take the knight on f3 and mess up white's pawns and then develop. And even though white has a protected passed pawn, they have some weaknesses elsewhere. Gives an advantage to black. Yeah, possibly I overestimated the strength of b4. I mean, in the game it looked concerning, but the engine just shrugs it off and it says, yeah, c5 takes care of the problems. This is a line I was trying to assess had white played b4, because I think I pretty much have to play c5 here. If I don't play that move, let's say that black just develops somehow. Like, let's say knight b d7, bishop d3, let's say bishop e7, castle. This is really bad. I can't go into this type of middle game when I have no hope of playing this move. That's absolutely essential to understand. My bishop is buried. My pawn structure's terrible. White has such an easy position here. In my opinion, it's greater than what the computer is saying. So, yeah, had b4 been played, I would have played this move and it would have got complicated. Even though the computer is seeing a way through the complications, I'm not so confident myself, especially with the clock ticking. So if e5, I thought maybe this move would be possible, but I wasn't sure. Take. And now I can't take here, I don't think, trying to hit the rook on c1 because of bishop c3, saving the rook with tempo, and then it appears that white's just going to take my knight next. But instead, knight d5 is good. And then I give this pawn, but apparently the knight coming to c6 is going to provide me a lot of counterplay. Yeah, like if they take this way, knight c6, and it's already a little tricky for white to defend this pawn. Queen e4, queen d7. I do have a nice blockade going here. Weird looking position. Yeah, and if d takes c5, then knight c6, and double attack here and here. Also, black has good play, apparently, for the pawn. But white played bishop g5, and it's almost like they didn't even consider b4, because they played this move quickly. Took 15 seconds for that move. But I'm spending some time because I feel like this is already a critical stage of the game. Whether black will get in c5 successfully or whether white will prevent that move is hanging in the balance. And if I were white, I would want to spend a bit more time to try to hash that out. In view of the game continuation, bishop g5 must be questioned because after bishop b4 check, they have to go right back. The computer wants to go here again. See, this is a scenario where e5 is encouraged, but I can always play h6 and counterattack the bishop. And if they take here, we take g5. If they take g7, we take here, and the dark square bishop will be powerful on this diagonal. So that is possible to play knight b d7, and that assists black in playing c5, and maybe the rook will get here quicker. I preferred this move, though. Then bishop d2. That's funny. The engine says bishop f8. I wonder if that's just because we had this exact same position a moment ago, or if it legitimately thinks bishop f8 is the best move. 0% chance I would play bishop f8 here, I'll tell you that. Yeah, I mean, why not bishop e7 instead? So I went ahead and played c5 because, again, I was worried about those scenarios where if I decline the bishop trade or somehow delay c5, white's going to clamp with b4. I mean, even something like this, again, like say I castle, b4 could happen. And strategically, black has to start panicking because this is bad. I need counterplay, and I'm not getting it on this diagonal. So I went for this, and they took on b4. That was expected, because if d takes c5, I can take here with tempo on the queen, and these pawns are just going to be weak for white. They do not want that. So it's okay to play bishop takes b4 quick. And as I was noting, I can't take here in between move because they eliminate this and save their piece. So I played c takes b4. And now they defended the e4 pawn. I played knight c6, natural move. Again, I wanted to keep the d7 square open for this knight, so that's why I didn't play knight bd7. And on c6, it's a double attack right here and here. Now, I thought for sure white was going to play knight b3 to defend these points. And then I was going to continue with rook c8, most likely, setting up discoveries on the queen. And if knight c5, it's important that I have knight takes d4. And the c-file pressure is yielding results. We're on their queen, and after knight takes knight, queen takes, this knight is pinned. White's losing. I think it's safe to say this is very, very bad. They're down a pawn, and they're in this pin. But they played bishop d3. Yeah, and here I spent some time, and I think I just made the wrong decision. I thought I had the luxury of time, and I can just wait to decide whether to take on d4 and a5. But yeah, queen c5, as played quickly by white, proved that notion wrong. So I probably should bank the pawn. I mean, it was a slightly difficult decision which one to go for. Because in some ways, I actually want to take a5 because I feel like d4 is still going to be weak. And by taking a5, I make sure I can swap the knight should it come to b3. But realistically, the center pawn is probably more important. And this pawn also remains weak here. So this just looks like the best line. And if knight b3, probably queen e5. I'm on e4. Also, rook c8 can be played. So again, if white does this move, rook c8 puts white in a fatal pin. So this is the line I should have chosen. And it looks like black is going to be up a pretty healthy pawn. I mean, my pawn is doubled, but I've got a nice diagonal here. The rook coming to c8. a5 could be weak in the endgame. Yeah, I should have just gone for this line. So I got a little fancy, rook c8, and just, more importantly, just flat out missed a move. I thought white had to play this move, whereupon I could do this, and I thought that this would be even a slightly better version of it because white's queen is blocking the b3 square for their knight to use. You can see that black has an even greater advantage in this line. Counterintuitive move, queen c5, like almost like a come at me bro type move. You know, they're in the line of fire and they move their queen ahead, even further into the thick of things. But yeah, like now I can't go knight takes d4 because they just take with the queen. And knight d7, my intended move, would be met by queen d6. Right, I think I played knight. No, I played knight takes a5 here, didn't I? Yeah, I played knight takes a5. I thought about knight d7, but I figured that this would be the answer. And their queen is deep in my position, but I can't attack it and repel it. I mean, I could offer a queen trade similar to what I did in the game, but not what I'm looking for out of this. I had a chance to be up a clean pawn, but now I'm looking at a even material scenario, and I spent some time to get there too. I was under 5 minutes. So white's kind of reckless strategy actually was paying off right around here. I mean, the position is still totally fine for black, but I didn't go up a pawn as I was expecting to. So after grabbing a5, I went knight d7, hitting the queen. Looks all right. Here, yep, queen e7. Maybe white should just play the endgame now. Like take, I was going to take with the king, and maybe king e2. And I figured this endgame might be a bit better for black. I especially like my knight here, where it can't really be harassed. And my bishop can bombard e4 from a distance. I'm threatening this bishop. It's a playable endgame, though, for white. Maybe this rook will come over to c1 soon. But white just started playing fast, and soon they were lost in a couple moves. I think they probably just wanted to keep the queens on because they saw my time situation and wanted to keep it complex. But that was the wrong call. Knight b4 is a nice move, and now the bishop is attacked, and also I'm looking at the c2 and c1 squares. Yeah, and white already has to find a pretty precise move here, I think. Knight g1. Wow. Yeah, that means that white's position is pretty desperate. If you have to play knight g1 here, having the queen defend the bishop. Because you can see the defect to any bishop move. If bishop e2 or bishop f1, there's knight c2 check with the fork on the king and the rook. And if bishop b1 is played, there's rook c1 check and go gather the rook over there. If rook a3, trying to use the rook to defend, same problem as bishop b1. We get the check in. So, yeah, this is the game right here. After knight g1, I'm sure black is much, much better. I probably would have just castled and made sure that white can't take here. But white has undeveloped and their king is stuck in the middle. Huge advantage black. So as played, I get the check in, go pick up the rook. I thought they might try queen c7. That is a move I have to see. But I think I can actually just play bishop a8 here. And I didn't see a follow-up for white. If queen c8, queen d8, we're ready to castle. The bishop's defended. The knight is undefended, but white can't exploit that. So they took on g7. I thought about queen f6 or queen f8 here, but I think rook f8 is probably even simpler. Just leave our queen near our king. Yeah, knight b3. Not much to be done for white. I mean, they can try to create some cheapo threats, but it's too much material. I thought they would go queen g3 and maybe threaten to come into c7. I was thinking about playing king d8 against that to stop that. Maybe e5 to block up the position. Give a pawn, but just close down some lines. Encourage exchanges. This knight can always come back to c6 too. Like say in the event of this move. Even playing this would be fine. Go attack this pawn. So knight b3. Yeah, and here I did something practical. This move is not necessary, but I highly recommend thinking about this in positions where you're just technically winning. You're up material, and the only obstacle in your way to victory are some tactical complexities and some, cheap shots your opponent can throw at you. If you give back a little bit of your material, but in the process induce some more exchanges and sort of dampen their play, it can be worth it. So here, in taking the bishop, and then taking the pawn on e4, I go down 1 point of material in that transaction, but I'm still up a clean piece. I'm up a clean minor piece now with 5 pawns each. So I'm still up enough to win, and I like my bishop now. I like the fact that there's been some exchanges. I feel like that's a decent deal for me. Again, not necessary, but given the time situation, I think it's all right. Here white played rook c1, and I gave this check, and I think they just have to play king d2. I don't see any other decent move. And I was going to go here, and I figured even though I'm not threatening to take the knight in view of rook c8, I blocked their play down the file, and with my extra piece, I'll soon prevail. I thought maybe white could go here and attack my bishop and also perhaps threaten this, but it really shouldn't be anything. Even if I had to play knight b6 here, I think it's still winning. b3, bishop d5, something like that. So instead they played king here and bishop c4 and then blunder the rook on the next move. Although they're probably just losing here. Although it must be said that bishop takes b3 again is not a threat because of rook c8. Okay, so summarizing this game, I somewhat misplayed the opening. I am going to go look this up. I think queen a5 check is the culprit, and I believe white can get an advantage after this move. It looks like the whole a5 b4 idea is not as strong as I thought it to be during the game, but white should have spent some time looking at that, and white really should have spent more time on their moves in total. As played, I got a good position after I was able to achieve c5. Bishop d3 was a mistake by white. They should have played knight b3. And after this, I made a mistake right back, though. Instead of playing knight takes d4, I got fancy with rook c8, trying to delay the decision, and I just missed that queen c5 is possible. Nice find by white. But after this, they were playing quickly, and queen g3 was a bad move, allowing knight b4. I wonder if they can just play king e2 here, by the way. I didn't look at that move, but king e2 is probably possible to defend the bishop. Although after I take on d3, king takes, their king is pretty exposed. So that's probably why the computer even likes knight g1 even more. Yeah, I think in both cases, white's not looking too hot. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure most of you guys watching this video like don't play like this, but if you can see elements of your own play and how white handled their clock, please, please, please make an effort to fix that if you want to improve. Like, you can improve playing the way that white did in this game. Again, don't want to embarrass modern 1054, but it's just so reckless, and you're going to get hurt. You're going to make mistakes, and you're not realizing your full chess potential. Nobody can. Not even like the top players in the world can get away with this. Well, okay, like maybe some of the top players. We'll make an exception for guys like Nakamura and Carlsen. But if they were using only a third of the time that they should be against their own peers, you can bet their results are going to suffer. So, anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll be back again soon with another one. Talk to you guys later. Bye.